we are still contemplating those three fundamental questions. Who are we? Where do we come from? And why are we here? And the fact that we're still contemplating it, the fact that we still don't know with certainty, that we just don't know. And there are various takes and various opinions on this. This makes it very, very clear that we are still exploring, still discovering, still not necessarily ready for the full truth. Who we are, where we come from, and why we're here. And before we can get to that real comprehension of our humanness, our role and our place on this planet of ours, in this beautiful world of ours, how we ended up here, in this incredible diversity of nature, in this incredible expanse called the cosmos, until we are ready to deal with those facts, we first need to deal with some of the paradoxes and some of the terrible truth that we have to face. And the fact that we don't know who we are, where we come from, and why we're here really presents what I call the human paradox. Because if we don't know who we are and where we come from, how could we possibly think we know where we are going or we are heading? Strangely enough, this is a quote from Jurassic Park. And it is sometimes the Hollywood movies that are, hiding advanced knowledge and information in plain sight that actually told us this. If we don't know who we are and where we come from, how do we possibly know where we are going? And this is the big question that I think and I hope some of the part of this journey and part of the connecting some of these dots will hopefully overcome that and get a lot more clarity on this. So before we start this journey, I would like to offer you the red and the blue pill. And first, we must face the terrible truth about some of the basic things in our world. And the first most important thing that by now all of us should embrace and really become comfortable with, that the government and our leaders are not our friends. They are not our servants. And I'm talking about the top leadership governments. I'm not talking about the mayors or, even governors and so forth. I'm talking actual government, the people that control the laws of our countries and of our states, I guess, in our provinces. So the governors would probably fall into that category. But the government is not your friend, is not your servant. The governments serve the banking families and the global elite. It is as simple as that. And the mechanism that has been inserted to put them in place is a mechanism that's evolved and been put in place many, many, many years ago. This is not something that evolved recently. And this is why they protect those bastions of government, those halls of government. They do not allow outsiders in there. And if for some reason an outsider makes their way in there, they do everything possible to get them out. We've seen what happens in elections all over the world. How they cheat, how they manufacture results. And it's now become very, very clear. And it's through my own experience in running with a political party in South Africa, in the UK, in Australia, almost in Canada, and almost in the USA from 2012 to 2016, that I realized and learned a great deal about governments and about the election process and the outcomes of elections. I must tell you, it's still, after all this time, going back and thinking about the election process, I still am not 100% clear who's actually in charge of the elections. It remains this weird gray mystery. It's almost, it's like this unnamed group of people that control everything about the election process in our countries. And you can never quite get to the point who it is. And it just shows you how convoluted, how complicated it has been made so that we can't get to the bottom of any shenanigans or cheating or crookery, because that's the way it's been designed. So the next few questions are very critical, because this then leads us up to what conclusions we should reach and we can reach with confidence. And this question is very simple. Is the government keeping secrets from us? And it's a funny question, because the answer is obviously yes. All governments in the world have secrets like we can't even imagine. They keep things under lock and key and classified information. Like, obviously, think about this, realize this. If the government is supposed to be your servant, how can your servant not disclose information to you, who puts the servant in control of planning a successful future for you? So the moment a government keeps secrets from its people is a very clear signal and a very clear message that they are not our servants, that they have appointed themselves as our slave masters. The next question is the government lying to us? And the answer is obviously yes. Well, you can reach your own conclusion, I guess. But from my perspective and my experience, it's very, very clear that the government is keeping secrets from us. And because of that, the government is lying to us about many, many things that we, as the people of the land, would never, ever condone or never, ever agree to. And then it gets even more stranger. Are the government agencies lying to us? And, you know, it's a funny question, because the answer to that, again, is a very obvious, resounding yes. The government agencies are keeping secrets, and they are constantly lying to us and manipulating us in many, many ways that we don't even realize. Are the pharmaceutical companies lying to us? And the answer to that is obviously yes. Pharmaceutical companies among the largest crooks in the world that we have, and they're probably the biggest culprits in keeping secrets, lying to us, not disclosing discoveries, not really doing what they claim to be doing, and looking after our health and having our health and wellness in mind. So yes, pharmaceutical companies are definitely lying to us. Are energy and oil companies lying to us? And obviously the answer is yes. We all know that there's been new technology evolved, new technology developed that could, within a very short space of time, completely overhaul the existing biofuel and oil and energy use that we have in the world, the way that we use oil, the way that we use energy and electricity, and how it's being distributed. There's technology that can completely turn it on its head and provide free electricity, free energy, levitation technology, and other technologies that you all know, we all know exist, that have been kept under lock and key. So yes, the energy and oil companies are lying to us, and they're keeping secrets from us. Is the media telling us the truth? That's an obvious no. The media is not telling us the truth. The media, the controlled global media, is the voice and the face of the global elite that spread disinformation propaganda, and is the ultimate tool of control, the communication tool of control to the masses. So the media is the main culprit of lying to us and placing seeds and placing little ideas in our minds, and mind control and ways that we can't even imagine. So if all of those agencies and our governments are lying to us, then why should we believe for 1 second that NASA is telling us the truth? And I specifically say this, and I bring this up because people will tell you about the lies on the mainstream media. People will tell you about the governments, how the governments are lying to us, and how the CIA is controlling us and lying to us, and the pharmaceutical crooks in the world. But the moment you come to NASA, for some reason, a large number of people believe that NASA is squeaky clean, and NASA is really the government agency that is telling us the truth, that is sharing very critical, important information with us, and we only get the truth from NASA. Well, nothing can be further from the truth, because NASA at this stage, and the more research I do, and I'm sure that you may have reached, or some of you may have reached the same conclusion, that at this stage, it seems like NASA may actually be the #1 disinformation agency that was created to keep humanity in the dark, completely disinformed, completely confused, and separated from what we call the universe around us. And this is a huge, huge subject that will really force us to let go of many belief systems and many entrenched paradigms that we firmly, absolutely hold onto that must be true, because NASA has been telling us since we were born, since we landed on the moon, since we landed on Mars, since we sent men into space and women into space, because NASA has been feeding us the truth and progress in science and technology and feeding us information from the cosmos and so forth. We might have to drop some of the biggest lies that we hold on to dearly. And this will probably be the biggest test for our cognitive dissonance to break through our own walls of cognitive dissonance, blindness. So I say this because I'm of the opinion that the secret space program that everybody is talking about, or not everybody, but so many people have been talking about for so many years now, the secret space program. Clearly, it's not a secret that there's a space program that NASA and the government has, the secret government departments and the industrial military complex, whatever the departments are that are involved, the secret space program. And that's, most of the people think that the emphasis there is on the secret, that the space program is a secret. Well, clearly it's not a secret, because so many millions and millions of people are aware of this secret space program. I'm of the opinion, from all the research that I've done and everything that's coming out of the really hidden in plain sight, NASA is hiding all of this information in plain sight, that it is the secret space program, that space is a secret. And this is why NASA was set up, to prevent us realizing what space is, to prevent us knowing what space is, to prevent us realizing who we are and how we fit into the cosmos, fit into the universe, what the world is, what the world looks like, and what space really is, how we get in and out of space. Is it possible? If it is possible, how does that happen? So it's the secret space program, in my opinion, and let that sink in for a while, because I truly believe, and I trust you might reach this opinion very soon yourself, if you have not yet reached that, that space is not what we think it is. In fact, it's probably very, very different, and something so opposite and contrary to what we've been shown that it will be absolutely shocking to most people when they come face to face with this. And for this reason, I believe that it is this is why Hollywood has been so rampant in pushing out the space and science fiction space movies, including Star Trek, including Star Wars, including Gravity, including all the space movies that have been put out there, the huge blockbuster movies with the most spectacular CGI and visual and computer graphic imagery and cinematography of people in space and what they're doing. Keep in mind that if Hollywood studios can do that, so can NASA. It's really that simple. Okay, this doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. If a Hollywood movie can make you believe that these people are in space and it looks like they're in space and they're floating in their jetpacks and they're doing all these things, if Hollywood can do that, so can NASA. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. So this brings us back to that line that I've been sharing for many years, and that notion that so many of us have come to terms with, is that everything we've been taught is a lie. And the older I get, the more I embrace this statement, the more I look at it, the more horrifying it becomes, and the more horrified I get, realizing how deep the lies are, how far back it goes, and how deeply it's entrenched, and how the tentacles of the lies, how they've infiltrated every crack and crevice of our existence, into every society, into every industry, into every part of our daily lives and what we do and how we live and how we interact. It is truly spectacular. And you realize that this is not something that could have happened overnight. This is something that must have happened over a very, very long time. In fact, let me bring this example up. When I was up against the banks, when I was doing my campaign in South Africa from 2010 to 2013, for 4 years, when I was doing my campaign against the banks, taking the banks and the South African Reserve Bank to the Constitutional Court and to the Supreme Court for crimes against humanity and operating, basically breaking the law on so many different areas. I was in the highest courts in Johannesburg and then in the Constitutional Court as well. What struck me then is the volumes, the millions of pages, the millions and millions of pages of laws and acts and bills and bylaws and etc. All the legal documents that have been created to complicate our lives, to complicate justice, to prevent people from getting justice, to allow the government through its corporations to control the courtrooms, to control the judges, to control the advocates that represent them, the advocates, the barristers and the lawyers that represent the corporations and the governments via these courts that they control. And you realize the volumes, the book after book after book of statute books and laws. It is quite spectacular. That, just that alone clearly shows us that this system that was created for us, that's supposed to be serving us, is exactly the opposite. It's a system that was created to prevent us from reaching success and finding the truth and overcoming hurdles and obstacles that stand in our way. And so this makes it very clear when you start looking into this, everything we've been told is a lie. It seems to me, and it's become very clear, that the bigger the lie, the more we believe it. Keep in mind, it's the small lies that they can't lie about the small things. Like they can't say, the bus never made it to the station, because the people will know, well, the bus arrived at the station, right? So they're not going to lie about little things. They're not worried about lying about the little things. They lie about the big things, the really, really big things. And then they just fudge the details. They fudge the details, they skew the narrative, and they skew it in the direction that they want it to go. And very quickly, you are so far removed from the truth. And what really happened is that nobody can make out what the hell is going on. So the lies that we've been told, again, are everywhere. It's in our history, about our species, about our origins. Science, the science books are filled with lies. It is quite spectacular, especially when you've gone through medical school like I have, studying pharmaceutics, and you get out of there and then you start looking at what it is that they actually taught me. And you realize that it's got nothing to do with wisdom, nothing to do with finding solutions for problems, and nothing to do with taking care and providing health. It's all programming for you to leave the school and be able to implement the program that they gave you, the program and the guided instruction manual for how to treat disease, how to treat this, what to prescribe, when to prescribe it, and what you can and cannot do, because there are laws that guide that whole industry. So this is a spectacular thing. It's such a big thing that when we say that everything we've been told is a lie, it's not just about that they're lying to us. It's about how they integrated the lies and the mechanism of deception propaganda, how they integrated that into every fabric and into facet of our lives and our society. The technology that we use, obviously, healthcare and religion and money. And then the big one is the cosmos. And that is what we're going to probably end up with today, is the lies about the cosmos, who we are, and what it really looks like. So how do they sustain such lies? And this is where you realize that this is a huge operation that cannot happen overnight. This is something that must have happened over an extended period of time. with a fully encompassing controlled propaganda and disinformation campaign that covers all organs of state, large corporations, and a lockstep strategy. Many of you would have heard that word lockstep. It's a very popular word with the global elite. Lockstep strategy that they write well in advance, that's planned decades and centuries ahead, handed down from generation to generation of the global elite to all state leaders through their international agencies like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, UNESCO. Believe it or not, UNESCO is just as big a culprit in all of this, because UNESCO deals with our ancient cultural heritage sites, and UNESCO is probably guilty of some of the most heinous and unimaginable crimes against native people of the world. And then the cartel of media giants that they use as the voice and the spokesperson to promote their disinformation and their propaganda. I want to come back to the UNESCO thing. You know, so many people are always so proud when we say, oh, this is a UNESCO site. The moment you hear that this is a UNESCO site, you should get very nervous and very worried, because UNESCO is an international organization controlled by the global elite and the bankers, the banking families and the appointed stooges, to go into all countries under the guise of humanitarian and protection of ancient heritage sites and protecting our history. What UNESCO does is they take control of our ancient sites, and then the people of the country lose control over that ancient site and everything around it and about it. UNESCO gains complete control over it and has a final decision of what can be done and cannot be done about, for example, excavations, archaeological digs, and so forth and so forth. So I'll give you an example. In Botswana, for example, at Sodilo Hills. Sodilo Hills is one of the most spectacular sites on Earth. And that is where the giant serpent cave is, on the mountain of the gods, in the middle of the North Botswana, of this flat area, and suddenly this huge mountain sticks out, known as the Mountain of the Gods, where the ancient gods in the ancient times used to live and create humanity and mess with DNA and mess with genetic cloning and create all kinds of cross-species creatures that most likely was the inspiration for the island of Dr. Moreau. This is what Sodilo Hills is. It is a spectacular place. The Bushmen have been living there. The Khoisan Bushman people have been living there for hundreds of thousands of years. And when UNESCO took over that site, they removed the only surviving Bushman family. They removed them from their ancestral land and put them into the desert to die, and to die like ants and rats. That's what UNESCO does. So be aware of this. UNESCO is a disgusting institution that destroys, takes control of our ancient heritage sites, and then does with it what they want. And they, more often than not, they remove the native and the original people from those ancient sites. So when I say United Nations, the WHO, the WTO, UNESCO, I'm very firm in knowing what I'm talking about here from personal experience. So first of all, one of the most important things that they need to do is to take control of our education system. This is a picture of Oxford University. Clearly, this is not a little institution that was put up by somebody or some department or some municipality because they want to educate our kids. Just by looking at these buildings, you can see the symbols, the signs, the symbology, the architecture that tell us this is a global elite, Illuminati, or whatever you want to call them in your own personal vocabulary. This is one of their institutions. So they take control of our educational institutions, from the educational material in primary schools, preschools, primary schools, high schools, and most importantly, the tertiary educations like Oxford University and most other universities on Earth. I'm not going to say all, but most, all the big, the so-called established universities, you know, Oxford, Cambridge, and the big American universities that suddenly escaped my vocabulary here. So the moment they have the universities under their control, now we create a hierarchy of educational fascism and educational dictatorship, because the higher you climb the ladder in this educational institution game, I guess, or boys club, the more brainwashed the more brainwashed you become, and the more you become prepared for them to appoint you to positions of power and control that they can trust, because they've now trained you really, really well. So when you see someone with their the doctor, professor, PhD, there's all the different qualifications that they have, you realize that those people are generally the most brainwashed. And once again, I'm making broad statements here. Not everyone that has gone through all this education is brainwashed, but most of the people that reach those levels in the educational institutions are. Otherwise, they would not be working in those. If they had their own mind, they followed their own intuition, followed their own research, they would have long ago questioned and challenged their establishments, and they would have been expelled. And to understand that statement that I've just made, please watch a documentary called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed, or No Intelligence Wanted. I'm not sure which one it is. Expelled, No Intelligence Wanted, and you will be shocked and horrified how top academics around the world that are heads of major university departments were summarily dismissed and expelled, never to be able to find another job in the tertiary education because of their stance and their belief by simply mentioning conscious design or intelligent design. This is a spectacular documentary that'll make you rethink the entire education system. I know, for example, a good friend of mine, Professor Peter Wagner, here in Port Elizabeth in South Africa. He's got the most trained academic in South Africa. He's got 4 PhDs. I think he's actually now got 5 PhDs, from archaeology to science to maths to physics. And I think he got one in law now as well. So he is one of the guys that clearly is out of the box. He has seen the writing. He understands what's going on. And yet he's an academic. So not all academics are brainwashed and are lost, but majority of them unfortunately are. So take control of the educational institutions. And the next big thing is take control of the research institutions. And the way that they take control of the research institutions is the big corporations are always the ones that do the big research. You and I can't do the research in my garage. I know how difficult it is to do research. In the research that I'm trying to do in the ancient ruins of Southern Africa, in the many samples that I've taken, in the many fossils and rocks that I've collected, just to get scans done of these rocks, to get x-rays done, and high photon emission x-rays, proton emission x-rays that really penetrate deep into these fossils to show you exactly the internal structure. I can't afford that. I can't afford to have all the soil samples scanned if there's gold residue in there. Basic, simple research that I can't even do because it's so expensive. So you can imagine how the top level research institutes, the Medical Research Institute, the Genetics Institutes, the Stem Cell Research Institute, the technology researchers, and so forth. It's only the large corporations with the money that can afford those research institutions, and then they don't share the knowledge and information. Everything that comes out of those research institutions is their privilege, is their intellectual property. They only share what they want to and put out what they want to and keep the rest so they can control humanity and regain control over their area, their industry, and the products that they manufacture and design and distribute to the poor people and the unknowing schmucks out there who got no idea how much technology, knowledge, information, healthcare has been withheld from us. And it's these same research institutions that provide the research knowledge and information that gets put into the textbooks from pre-primary schools, whether it's history, whether it's literacy, whether it's language, or they plan the programming and the very early level propaganda and programming and mind control with how they now structure the content of our very early learning books and textbooks to the more advanced textbooks in medicine and science and engineering and technology and physics and science and so forth. So now you know the information in our textbooks only comes from the very large corporations that can afford these research institutions and the labs and the research labs. So by controlling the labs, controlling the educational institutions, you pretty much control the flow of knowledge and what goes in and what gets taught at schools and what does not get taught at schools. And you know by now that any teacher that strays or lecturer at university that strays away from the textbook, teaching what's in the textbook, gets fired, loses their job. And you realize it's a draconian system that has been imposed on us. It's nothing to do with education and learning. It's all programming us and preparing us to be very obedient future labor force. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Take control of our educational material, as I mentioned, the textbooks, and starting very, very early. So all the information comes from these very big corporations with their big money and the research and literature and everything that is very carefully controlled goes into the textbooks, into our education systems. And then the publishing companies, it's very, you know, when I still worked in publishing in the early days of launching my books, you realize how there are specifically chosen publishers that publish educational books. And these publishers constantly publish all educational books. You will never be given a publishing job or what's it called, a publishing quota or whatever, to publish some educational books, because that is a very closely guarded group. Again, it's a boys' club and part of the fraternity of the control mechanism. And then the important thing, you start the kids as early as possible. Start brainwashing the children as early as possible. Brainwashing them in the content of the textbooks, in how it's presented, how it's taught, how we control the behavior, how we make children do things, follow orders, etc., etc., and break down our natural ability of creativity. The entire school process is a very cleverly disguised propaganda machine and brainwashing manipulation machine to break down the very early creative abilities and creative skills that we have as young children, and replace them with dictatorial fear-mongering, you know, obey your teachers, obey your masters, obey your superiors, obey your leaders, and so forth. And this is very important. So this is why they start children out at school so early and start programming us so very early. Take control of the media is one of the key things. Obviously, you are aware of the fact that all the major media and news networks are controlled, and through that they spew the ongoing, never-ending, brainwashing, repetitive propaganda that they create for us. The developing story, they develop the story, they create the story, they develop the story, and then they turn it into reality. The developing story scenario in the hundreds and thousands of TV channels that are controlled by the international media distribution networks, the platform that distribute the content for all the news networks. And if you want to get really into the details of that, there's a beautiful documentary that was recently released, probably about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, called Monopoly. It's done by a Dutch guy. Find it on the internet, Monopoly. I think it's on my Telegram channel. Yes, if you go to my Telegram channel, I have a link to Monopoly. It is a truly very, very well prepared documentary with all the details that show you how the media thing is controlled. And the most important thing is are the agencies that distribute the content for the news, specifically written, exactly written, word for word. And this is how you often see so many news networks around the world, where the newsreaders say exactly the same thing. They repeat exactly the same thing, because it all comes from this centralized distribution agency for the content of the news channels. And then the way to lie is a very, very advanced psychological tool, because you have to stick close to the truth, stick as close to the truth as possible, but change the critical facts. So it's really important. So for example, and obviously this is then called fake news. So this is how they report on the bombings or the 9/11, and this is how they report on everything. They're masters of manipulating the narrative to describe what's happening, but change the details so that we reach the wrong conclusion and we believe what they tell us. And this is the spectacular power that the giant media companies have. It's truly astonishing. The bombing and the terrorist events and everything in the mainstream media. And then one of my favorites, obviously, that we're going to deal with is, for example, atoms. The atom versus the structure of the atom. So we all know atoms exist. We actually can see atoms under electron microscope. So we can't lie about atoms, but we can lie about the structure of atoms, because very few people can actually understand what the structure of atom is, or when they show you the pictures or the scans, what the subatomic particles actually look like, or what the nucleus of the atom looks like. So they can lie about that. So this is, again, how they lie. They tell us the truth in the one area, but then fudge the details so that we get the wrong information and reach the wrong conclusions about what's really going on. They use mind control tricks and tools that are not really understood by the public. And this is the other thing, is like people don't understand certain words, certain phrases, certain the way that you answer, the way that you ask questions, the way that you intimidate people. And they train the journalists on these major news networks, go through these schools where they trained to do this. And it's spectacular to what levels these people go. So mind control tricks and tools not understood by the mainstream public. This is a big thing. And then over and over, keep promoting through the media, through the textbooks, through the education system, keep promoting the globalist agenda in every possible subject, in everything imaginable. I consciously put those pictures there to throw the cat among the pigeons about this whole argument about what shape the earth is. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, because it just, at this stage, even, it is too much a sensitive subject. Not everyone is ready to have that discussion. So what you will notice, for example, keep your eyes open to TV shows, Netflix shows, movies, and start paying attention to the placement of globes, the globe Earths in movies. And you'll start seeing an agenda developing here. That hit me probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and I've been noticing it now. And it's like clockwork. In the most unnecessary places, in every movie and every TV show, in scenes that should not necessarily have a globe Earth in it, there's a globe Earth standing there. A guy going to the toilet and down the passage is a globe Earth standing against the window, and a child in his bedroom and a guy in his office and having a meeting, and there's always globe Earths in every shot, and in very specific strategically placed shots. And you start to see that this is not by accident. They're doing this on purpose. Why they're doing this remains a very hot topic and a sensitive subject that we may get to at the end of this entire discussion. So promote the globalist agenda in every subject. And the globalist agenda is not just the shape of the earth. The globalist agenda is technology, healthcare, minerals, industry, corporations, countries, borders, you name it. That's the globalist agenda. Currency, money, obviously, banking, central banking, all these things that they have absolute control over. Always make people believe that they're in control, that they know what's going on, that the rest of the people have no idea what's going on, that we just dumb stooges that have to hang on every word they tell us because they're very smart and only they know how it works. And then finally, in this process, obviously there are many other things they do. I've just really touched upon a few of the most obvious ones that you probably are aware of, but it's important before we start from the very beginning, as I said up front, before we can start from the very beginning, we had to just remind ourselves of what's going on so that when we come across something that really, really fights with our own belief system, that we are prepared to drop our guard and allow that information in. And it's because it's only then that we start to grow and start to learn new things. And I know I'm an absolute perfect example of that, where 10 years ago, there were certain things I simply was not prepared to listen to or even enter into my psyche or my area or contemplate as a possibility. And guess what? 10 years later, that big no-no is actually firmly entrenched in my belief system in many different things that previously I could not have imagined I would believe or understand or comprehend or even promote as a possible area of knowledge or truth or wisdom. So finally, the final thing that the global elite's objective is make life as difficult as possible for as many people as possible. And that is really, for me, that's probably the toughest and the most heartbreaking part of this whole global elite control system, and the dumbing down of the people, the disinformation, the propaganda campaign. While the people are disinformed, naive, ignorant, beautiful souls that are born and live life believing what they're told, and just simply believing that the government is their friend, looking after them, the government will never do anything that will harm them. And these beautiful, naive souls, naked souls that are just so trustworthy and trusting, I mean, just go out there and they just cannot succeed in life. And life is so hard and so difficult, and they just can't understand why life should be so hard. And this is why they have to make life so difficult, because they have to keep people tied up and occupied, so they don't have enough time, spare time, to go and do research, to get informed, to get educated, and to become wise, to attain wisdom and break through that that global control barrier and the control system that has been imposed on us, and realize what's going on, realize who we are, where we come from, and why we're here, and what has been done to humanity. So this is what they do, and this is why so many people struggle for most of their lives. Think about the statistical probability, and this is a simple scientific physics mathematical argument. Now, if you study statistical probability, like flipping a coin, heads or tails, flipping a coin, heads or tails, ends up more or less 50-50, 49-51, 48-52, 50-50, and it varies all the time, very close to evening out. Statistical probability normally balances things out. Because in nature, keep in mind, we're going to talk about nature, the structure of nature. So the toroidal fields that manifest as a primordial shapes of everything in creation, these beautiful balanced toruses, these toroidal fields that spin this way and from this side and opposite way and this side, and where they meet, they form that beautiful accretion disk, and the accretion disk and the toroidal, this perfectly balanced toroidal field. This is a balanced organism in nature. And this is how everything should work, balanced, 50-50, the yin and the yang, and so forth. The fact that out of 8 billion people in the world, 7 billion people wake up every day, and they go to work, and they work hard, and they do something. They dig trenches, they build cars, they make building materials, they make beds, they do washing, they look after children, we grow food, we bake food, and we do so many different things, make clothes and invent things. So every day, 7 billion people go out there and they do something in the hope that they'll better their life, to invent something, to create, invent new technology, and so forth. And out of those 7 billion people, majority of the global population, very few of those people ever attain a happy life and attain happiness, prosperity, and abundance. Most of the people alive today die in poverty, misery, unhappy, disgruntled, confused, and wondering what the hell happened. Why did they have to go through this life and this torture and this misery? And it's this complete imbalance that clearly shows us that this is not part of a natural, balanced, organic, statistical probability outcome. The fact that so few people succeed in attaining their dreams, or being able to create this or create that, our natural skills and abilities, clearly shows us that there is a program, some sort of a program that controls all of the goings on in the world, that prevent people from ever achieving their dreams, making life as difficult as possible for as many of us as possible.